How important is it for someone like you today to look back at not only the people who've lost their lives, but the people still with us who are suffering, and also those people still serving in the armed forces?
Well, to anybody that has served for this country, or indeed our Commonwealth allies and our friendly countries, paying our tributes to the fallen, first and foremost, is most important. They have laid down their lives in usually terribly traumatic circumstances because our governments have asked them to go and do that very difficult work. So that's vitally important. But I think there's a much deeper, almost like peeling an onion, really, of a set of considerations that I'll be thinking about every remembrance, and that's to do with, of course, paying our respects to those who've lost their lives. That's cost them arms and legs or whatever. And the mental stress stays with a lot of people too, because in some cases they're exposed to things that humans are not really conditioned to see and to experience. And I think we need to remember that and be mindful that, you know, we have a community of veterans who may need more support than they're getting.
Well, that's it. I mean, today will be a wonderful spectacle, watching all those people march past the cenotaph, every one of them with a story. But they are alive, and that's one thing, to remember the dead. But to remember those who've had life-altering changes because of conflict or whatever, those are the ones that we just don't seem to be able to acknowledge fully and help. Why not? Why can't we motivate the same sort of level of emotion towards them?
I think when there are obvious physical injuries, it's easier for people to realise that person has suffered and to offer some sort of support. I think it's particularly difficult when it's the non-obvious effects of their service. And of course, this doesn't apply to everybody. You know, a lot of people go through their service careers and they come out of it as strong individuals and, you know, look back on a very interesting time. But there, of course, are many who, because of circumstance, you know, those peculiar moments in active service, find them in a position where, you know, they experience something very traumatic and something that most of us would, you know...
Is it uniquely British, not being able to talk about that sort of thing?
I don't know. I really don't know about that, but I know what you mean. You hear this of generations, don't you? Both of my grandparents and my grandfathers served in the First World War.
I was going to say, did you come from a forces family?
Well, I think most of us, if we trace our roots back, you know, for the wars of national survival, we'll find that everybody pitched in. So, yes, my father's father was in the infantry and my mother's father was in the Royal Flying Corps. I didn't know Mum's dad, but my father's father I knew. He lived long enough for me to, you know, be a teenager.
So how old were you when you joined up?
Never talked about it.
He never discussed it. And
that generation didn't.
And I think he found it quite difficult. I did start to take an interest as I grew up, you know, and I would ask him a bit, and he was always very... He'd answer the question, but very briefly and without going into any details. I think it was just too difficult for him.
Yeah, it's interesting how people cope in their own ways with it, or attempt to cope. What about the military covenant? Do we need a strengthening of the military covenant in this country? Because it's also not just... And I don't want to pile... As you say, a lot of people come out of the armed forces and they are strengthened and resilient and great leaders and multi-skilled. And all this
Careers, yeah, exactly.
But there are a lot of people who are coming out and struggling, and part of that is going to be things like being institutionalised, which you are in the armed forces to an extent. You know, Civvy Street is a different world. Do we need to have a stronger covenant that says, when you leave, for whatever reason, we're going to support you, ease you back into society a bit more carefully?
I think the Armed Forces Covenant is a great idea. I don't know that it's well enough known yet. It's only been going for about a decade, I think. I'm a reservist, so I'm in the RAF Reserve, the Royal Auxiliary Air Force, and have spent all of my time as a specialist contributor, if you like. So I had a civilian career alongside that. But the Armed Forces Covenant is particularly important to reservists because it puts a measure of protection around individuals who will, by the state, be required to take some time out of their day job and go and serve our country, and it guarantees that they'll have their job to go back to at the end of that service. And what we found in the reserve area is that employers have been, on the whole, very eager to get involved with that and sign up for it, because the training and the skills and the leadership that individuals learn during their military service translates directly to what they do in their day jobs, you know, so there is a symbiosis there.
Yes, but in a way, what you just said suggests that actually we look after reservists better than we look after full-time.
Well, I can't really speak for
I know it's different, but it just shows, doesn't it?
Yes, my experience of the Armed Forces
you've risen to
Covenant
the enormously high rank of wing commander, which suggests you've been in the business a long time.
24 years.
Really?
Yes, and but that's that's a good example of what I've been saying. The military gives even reservists the opportunity to grow, to develop, to command a squadron, which I have done.
So you would have been squadron leader?
Yes.
Very good.
Squadron leader squared, as they used to call me.
Yes.
Very good. I just wonder if, I mean, looking back on that time and the sort of the peacetime work, if you like, away from the hellishness that can go on, that must have been a hell of a thrill. Actually, so some of the stuff, just some of the machinery you were dealing with and what you were doing must have been quite something. It's a great career, isn't it? It can be.
I think so. I mean, I believe that I've been really privileged to have had the chance to contribute, to be involved in some of the things that I have. My own squadron is in our own field. It was the media squadron. So our job was to go with the Royal Air Force everywhere it goes and tell its story. And I always used to say to people joining, what we're going to get is a ringside seat on the making of history. And it's quite true, you know. So that has been an immense privilege for me as a working media practitioner.
Well, actually, yes, and also, yes, getting the story out there, telling people about it, because recruitment and everything. But it's also just motivating people towards having more respect, I suppose, for our servicemen and women.
Definitely. I think if people have served in the reserve, they take back all of that understanding to the communities that they come from, you know. And I read a statistic recently, which I'm sure is probably right. Only 3% of the population now have a direct connection with the armed forces.
Really?
So, you know, this is why remembrance is so important, and so that we can keep on reminding people that, you know, our armed forces are they're not just faceless individuals that live in a box and are taken out at times of crisis. They're people that live in our communities. They're citizens, and they do this work at the behest of our governments when there's a crisis or when there's a need for armed forces intervention. And I think it's important that, you know, we keep telling that story and recognising the sacrifices.
So is the media squadron out and about somewhere today?
All over the place today. Yes.
Wing Commander, really good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, there's a big argument. I think peace through strength, and certainly you can apply that to our armed forces, can't you? Let's get them built up and ready to roll and help maintain peace in that way.
Which brings us to our question in our poll of the day. And today we're asking, for instance, when you look at young people, are schools doing enough to make sure children understand what our veterans' service has all been about and what today is all about? We'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. Final result will be announced a bit later on in Nana Aqua's show.
Yeah, if you want to take part, you can scan that QR code on your screen if you're watching on TV.